Good evening. I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting of Tuesday, February 20th, 2018. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Okay, thank you. Albertson?
Here.
Bueller? Bueller.
Here.
Danforth?
Here.
Lallam?
Here.
Manti? Here. Roby? Here. Solom?
Here.
Thorson is absent. Vilhauer?
Here.
Y?
Present.
Thank you.
All right, the first item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion and second for approval? Moved by Bueller, second by Y. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. The second item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion and second for approval? Moved by Vilhauer, second by Danforth. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 3 is the 2017 annual report presentation from First District Association of Local Governments. And we have their director, Todd Kays, here.
Good evening, everyone. I promised Bruce that I'd try to keep this to a 5-minute sprint. We might go 7, but we'll see how fast we get through this. A lot of juicy information. Good evening. My name is Todd Kays, and I'm the Executive Director of the First Planning District here in Watertown. Every year I like to take the opportunity to come and visit with the City Council just to give a quick overview of work activities within the district and within Cottington County and the City of Watertown as a whole. So for the public's information, I'm just going to do a quick synopsis of the district and then take any questions if you have any. But the First District is one of 6 regional planning and development districts located in South Dakota. We have sister offices in Rapid City, Pierre, Aberdeen, Yankton, and Sioux Falls. We're not government, but we're creatures of government. We were created in 1971 by Governor Frank Farrar under an executive order, and we operate under a joint powers agreement with 11 counties and 76 communities in northeastern South Dakota. Our mission then is still the same as it is today. We try to improve the quality of life for individuals in this area by promoting economic and community development projects and assisting local units of government in their endeavors to do those things. As far as how we are governed, we have a 35-member governing body, which meets 3 to 4 times a year. They establish the policies, the work plan, the budget for the organization. They hire the executive director on an annual basis. Currently, Brenda Hanton is the chair of that organization. She also sits from the county commission. Glenn Vilhauer is the municipal representative on the board, and new to Watertown, Chris Shilkin has recently appointed as our at-large representative to the county, to the board. We also have the chairman of the Flanders Santee Sioux and Sisseton Wapano Yate also sit on the board, but there's 3 individuals from every county. How we're funded, it varies from year to year, but not a whole lot. 20 to 23% of our operating revenues on any given year comes in the form of dues. All counties and municipalities with a population over 100 pay dues into the organization, and we use those dollars to leverage other state and federal grants. We also do some state and federal contract work for about 28% of our operating revenues, and the rest comes in the area of fee-for-service work. And we're able to do fee-for-service work for our members at rates that are discounted, comparable to the private sector, and that's just due to the power of the collective. As far as staff, we have 14 full-time employees, a couple part-time employees, a lot of experience on staff. I've been with the district, it'll be 25 years this May. I've been the director going on 10. As far as what we do, we are very well known for being application preparers. Grants, loan applications, private, public side of the equation. We work on those proposals all over the place on a yearly basis. If projects are fortunate to be funded through state and federal dollars, we also help with the red tape management. There is no free dollars, there is no free lunch, there's always some strings attached to it, and we have expertise in doing environmental reviews and the things that are required of the state and the feds. When it comes to planning and research, if there's a topic that you have an interest in, you want some research on, we do a lot of base research across the boards in a wide variety, from anything from HR to planning and zoning to nuisance to economic development, meeting facilitation, what have you. We also have some specialties that we do work in. We do work with tax increment financing, and especially in smaller communities. Geographic information systems is really something that's involved with every aspect of our business. So we have 3 full-time and 2 part-time people that just work in GIS database management. And then we also have revolving loan funds. The First District Development Company is a sister organization under our umbrella for staff people that work with private entities where we use revolving loan funds in our own portfolio. And we also are a small business administration certified development company where we participate with local lenders and individuals looking at expanding and starting new businesses in the area. And then we're always out there supporting state and federal programs that have an impact on our membership. A lot of things we do. I was a planner for many, many years, and I always thought planning was really great, but it's hard to sometimes show return on investment as a land use planner. So what we usually do is we try to show the dollars that came into the district in the region over the last year on various projects that were done by our members. We were fortunate to assist our membership last year with about $6.9 million in loans and grants, 2.8 specifically in grant dollars. So for every dollar's worth of dues, we generated about $11 on state and federal income that came in for specific projects. In the 10 years since I've been the district director, we've assisted our members with about $56.9 million in outside funding sources, so that's about a $25 return for every dollar's worth of dues across the district. In Cottington County, here we've seen between 2008 and 2017 a little over $10 million in grants, about $23 in return on investment over the years. In Watertown specifically this last year, we had about $168,000 that came in grants that our office was able to assist. Since 2008, that's been about $3 million in grants, so we've seen about a $35.86 return on investment. It's not that we have the money in the closet or under the bed, but we know which closets to knock on, and we act as that conduit to the communities and those federal and state funders as they look at making improvements. And Watertown should be commended for all of the efforts that the leaders go through to try to access and look for programs that can help fund various infrastructure projects. I mentioned earlier that we, First District Development Company, within our office, also worked and did actually 4 loans in Cottington County this last year, where we were able to assist in providing almost $2 million in loans to 4 projects that had about a total $5 million investment into the community. So something that we're very glad that we're working both the private and the public side of the equation. As far as just some specific projects here in Watertown, up until about last fall, Luke Muller would attend all the planning and zoning board meetings, providing technical staff, and he still does that with staff on a weekly basis, meeting with them, talking about acting as the conduit. He's also the Cottington County zoning officer. But Luke does a lot of help with the planning and zoning for the city of Watertown. We do a lot of GIS database work for the city. We manage the 911 database. We assist in address assigning. We host your website that has the GIS information. We also maintain the different database sets for the planning and zoning department. Ted Hayter in our office, who I think you'll be talking to in a few minutes on another issue, is currently administrating the CDBG Boys and Girls Club CDBG grant that was awarded last year for the Boys and Girls Club improvements. We helped in assisting in getting that grant to the city for that project. Luke Muller in our office has also been working for a couple years on the comprehensive land use plan, and that's going to be coming to you, I guess, my understanding is sometime before June, where for your approval. Greg Mogg worked with Jay early last year in January, February time on the Tony Hawk Foundation grant application. That was a $10,000 grant to help with the skate park. And Greg also worked, I think, with Mike on the solid waste grant application, which the city recently received a $168,000 grant and a $102,000 loan for those projects. And this year we also did some fire response maps for the fire department as they were looking at trying to identify future sites for a new fire station somewhere down the road. So we're very busy, not only in Watertown, not in Cottington County, but throughout the district as well. And my mantra is always to tell our members, all you have to do is ask. And we're pretty responsive. Sometimes it doesn't happen as fast as we would like to get it out, or maybe you'd like to have it done, but all you have to do is ask, and we'll be there to support you in whatever issue, grant writing, policy, GIS, what have you. With that, I'd be more than glad to take any questions that you might have. And then I guess finally, we really enjoyed our working relationship over the years and look forward to another good year.
All right, thank you, Todd. Any questions?
Was close? Was it close, Bruce? All right.
Glenn wants to make a comment.
I realize I'm not technically not independent here because I am, or I have conflict there because I sit on the First District Board, but my observation from seeing it from the inside, it's money well spent that we as a community invest with the First District. So let's not ever second guess where our dollars are going because they're being put to good use.
And just because you sit on the board, I do appreciate that comment, but thank you. Again, and most of you are aware, the door is always open to call, contact, talk to me on anything, about anything at any time. So I do appreciate our wonderful working relationship that we've had. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda, number 4, is authorization for the mayor to sign intergovernmental agreements with Brookings 911 Center and Brown County Communications Center for backup communications services. I think Scott McMahon is here to tell us about this.
Good evening, Scott McMahon, Captain of Support Services with the Watertown Police Department. And tonight we are asking for your authorization to enter into an agreement with Brookings Police Department, their 911 center specifically, as well as Brown County Communications. As part of the Next Gen 911 statewide process that we're going through, we've been asked by the State 911 Coordination Board to have a primary and secondary backup PSAP, PSAP standing for Public Safety Answering Point, to our center. So what we're working on is establishing a formal agreement with Brown County and Brookings Police Department so that we have that in place to refer to pertaining to backup centers.
Okay, before we have questions, I'd like to look for a motion and a second to authorize my signature. Moved by Albertson, second by Solom. Now, discussion questions? Don?
Scott, you may have misspoke. You mean Brookings County, or is Brown County involved in this too?
Brown County is the primary, and Brookings, the city of Brookings, Brookings Police Department 911 Center is a secondary.
Okay.
North and south. Adam?
Do we already have like a unwritten agreement with them, handshake type?
Well,
They'll take it type deal if we fall down?
Yes, the state, from the Next Gen 911 position, through the state, there was an agreement that each PSAP had to select a primary and secondary backup. And the reason for that is if we should become overwhelmed at our 911 center for like a tornado event or something like that,
Sure.
or we would have technical failure, that 911 call won't get dropped. It'll automatically be forwarded to the next 911 center, in this case, which would be Brown County. And if for some reason Brown County could not answer that call, it would go on to the next center, which would be the city of Brookings, Brookings Police Department.
So we're just looking for a formal agreement then?
So what we did is we took it a step further and we established this formal agreement, which was given to us by the company that is contracted with the state to perform the Next Gen services. I asked them if they had some kind of a formal agreement that we could use rather than just agreeing.
Yep.
And they said, sure, we have one that we've used in the past. So they sent that to me and I forwarded that on to Brown County as well as the city of Brookings. And both of their governmental boards have agreed to the agreement.
Okay.
So now we just need our agreement, and then that'll stay in place. It's a contiguous agreement. There is no expiration date in the agreement, so it'll remain in effect unless one of the parties decides that they would like to be excluded from the agreement.
We're
where do we sit then in that? So if Brown County is overwhelmed and they send it to Brookings and Brookings is overwhelmed, but we're not, you see what I'm saying? I mean, where does Watertown sit in that whole scenario of backing each other up?
Well, each PSAP was allowed to select who they wanted as a backup. So, for example, if Brown County, as our primary center, could not take that call, like I said, it would go to Brookings, and I'm sure by that time, one of two things is going to happen. Either it'll get answered by Brookings, or the caller is probably going to disconnect the call. Because if you look at the amount of time that goes into a call, for example, if I was to make a 911 call right now to our center, it would take 12 seconds on my phone before that first ring went through. Then you figure the time for another couple rings, and then you figure the time that it'll take to process that and send it to the next 911 center, which would be Brown County. And if they didn't answer it on the first ring, I mean, you're talking 30 seconds into the call by that point in an emergency. Most people tend to hang up at that point, but if they stayed online, it would actually go to Brookings.
Okay, so at any point in that process, if Brookings and Brown County are overwhelmed, would the call come to you? I guess that's what I'm wondering. If, all right, as a primary, you know, are you the primary for anybody? I guess is what I'm trying to say. Are we as Watertown's?
Yes, we are the primary for Brown County. So we are listed as their first PSAP should they have a failure or should they become overwhelmed. Now we are also listed as secondary for Marshall County and Roberts County to the north of us. So those.
That's what I was trying to figure out was, you know, how does the whole system work so that nobody, you know, gets lost?
And this is really the one of the focal points of Next Gen 911. If you look at our current situation today with CenturyLink on a 911 trunk line, if there would be a cut or some kind of a failure that we don't yet know about at the police department, and you try dialing 911 and it doesn't work, it's not going to go anywhere. With Next Gen 911, the whole intention or purpose behind that is that call will now go somewhere. It's not going to be a failed call that doesn't go anywhere. It's going to be passed on to the next PSAP that's listed. So that's the smart part about Next Gen 911 compared to what we're doing today in today's business.
Glenn?
Scott, this looks like good planning going forward. Have there been situations in the recent past where we did have failures or were overwhelmed, I think was the terminology you're using, that we had to rely upon somebody else?
We have seen some failures on the business line side, but as far as the 911 side, I can't recall a failure from CenturyLink on 911 in the time that I've been in charge of the 911 center. But I do know that it has happened with with the current 911 system as it is elsewhere, where they've had failures, and sometimes people don't know that those failures exist until CenturyLink is able to identify through their what they call a 911 repair center in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where they can see what trunks they're doing, and they're monitoring those trunks for failures. And when they identify it, oftentimes it's related to some type of a cable cut or similar situation.
All right, Mike?
Scott, so if we're sitting here and we're back up for Aberdeen, for example, and a call gets diverted here.
Yes.
Do you know that it's coming from the Aberdeen
Yes.
PSAP area?
Yes.
Okay, but you may or may not know whether that's an individual incident or whether there's something else bigger going on up there. Is that fair?
Right. There's also some particular details that need to be worked out too, as far as, for example, if our PSAP was in a state where it couldn't answer a 911 call, and now Brown County answers it for us, how are they going to relay that information back to us? We have a couple options. We have a phone number that is in the 911 center that is not a published phone number, so that's one option. The other option is both us and Brown County have radio communications where they can get on the radio, a state Watertown INT station, and say, Watertown, this is Brown County, we have traffic for you, and then we can relay the message that way. Currently, Brookings does not have access to that state INT channel, but they plan on getting it. INT standing for interagency, where multiple agencies can be on that channel and both talk on the channel and receive on the channel. So there are some ways to communicate, even though we might not be able to, to answer it on a business line or whatever the case
So
might be.
Aberdeen wouldn't do the dispatch notification; they would just take the call.
Right, because that's, as Next Gen 911 progresses, we've talked about a few things that are benefits already as a result of that. One is you'll never have a call that goes unanswered. Two is you have another center that can answer it and forward it back to you. Three is across the state, as we continue to grow with Next Gen 911, we have to figure out how do we dispatch resources so that Brown County could essentially dispatch any of the 45 fire departments, the 12 ambulance services, or the whole host of law enforcement that we dispatch for. But currently, a lot of those fire departments are on analog radios, which means they don't have access to the state INT channel. One way to solve that would be for all fire departments to be on an INT channel where they could talk to each other, such as our ambulance service. When it leaves Watertown and they're going to go into Hamlin County, they have an INT or interagency channel so that they can speak with the Eston ambulance or whatever ambulance it is that they're trying to speak to. But not all fire departments have that capability. So that will probably be something we'll look at in the future, or the agencies will have to look at individually, see if they can move that direction, or we continue with the phone and radio communications from PSAP to PSAP. But right now, like I said, I wouldn't be able to dispatch for any of Brown County's resources, and they would not be able to dispatch for any of the resources that we have from our PSAP serving the 6-county area.
Any other questions? Did I get a motion yet? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Item number 5 is authorization for the mayor to sign a banking services agreement. And I'll look for a motion and second for approval on this. Moved by Vilhauer, second by Danforth. All right, Kristen, would you like to explain this?
Thank you, Mayor. RFPs were sent out and received back for banking services in 2017. At that time, municipal utilities determined that they would continue services with Great Western Bank. Council rejected the proposals for banking services in the summer of 2017. I am proposing the agreement with Great Western Bank be approved as presented. A couple of the changes of the agreement from the previous year is the monthly service fees will be $800 a month versus $950 a month. And the other change is that interest is calculated on the funds a little bit different. The previous agreement was based off a federal funds rate plus 2 basis points. The current agreement will use the 91-day T-bill rate plus 8 basis points. The terms of this agreement were discussed with Adam at Municipal Utilities and Great Western Bank. I request the council approve the banking service agreement. And if you have any questions, please ask.
Any questions, Mike?
Kristen, could you refresh our memories here as to why we rejected the banking? I know there was something in the posting on it or something that
I think the reason, if I go back and hopefully I get this right, when the RFPs were sent out, the RFPs included the city and municipal utilities funds together. When they came back and were proposed to the city council, utilities stated that they wanted to remain with Great Western. So the RFPs would have included basically the funds for us together, which probably could have changed what the RFPs came back at. So if I remember right, based off of that, the council then just rejected the proposals.
Glenn? Oh, sorry, Don?
I was on the committee on that. It was me. Glenn, you were on it. Was anybody else or just the two of us? Any other council members on that? I think it was just the two of us. I think what you're saying is what I remember, and that we had the RFP go out. When we got the responses back, utilities said they chose a different path, quite frankly. So that, I think, in their mind, nullified the RFP. Is that
Yes.
what they said? Okay, so the talk was maybe go out for 2 separate RFPs. That was the talk at the time that I remember. Is that accurate? But they never, they didn't go out for separate RFPs.
No. And that would have been the city's responsibility. And shortly after this happened in the summer of 2017, which it seems like a long time ago, but then there, of course, was some changes to the finance office. From my standpoint, with the finance office, we have new positions, new people. Changing of banking services is quite a big deal. We would have to train people on the internet banking, and there'd be some other things. Also taking into consideration that utilities did not want to change banks. We would then also have to start the process of pulling the CDs out. Our current funds are all together, so we invest our money together. So we would have to, as we cash those, start to keep some of that money back to start to separate the funds. So I guess for me, as the finance office, I felt like this was the best route. We've done banking with Great Western for, I think it's close to 20 years. So there's no interruption in this office, nor is there any interruption for utilities at this time. The other kind of key thing is right now we share the services of the city finance office does the bank reconciliation. So that would be things that would have to be separated. And we also do some of the payroll taxes are paid, so there'd be learning how to do journals and stuff. So at this time, that was my recommendation, is to continue with Great Western for the time being. Part of the, if I remember right too, when the RFP went out, I believe it was sent out with the thought that the city finance office and also utilities would do some of their own processing of checks. I would like to gather more information on how many checks, and I currently have our front staff doing that. How many checks do we take in? How much work does that add to the staff in my office, just to even see if it's feasible for us to do? So I feel like there's maybe some more information that needs to be gathered and some more things that need to be discussed, but this allows us to continue our services kind of as we are.
Glenn?
Just a couple of comments. I definitely have to defer to Kristen and your staff's recommendation on this. I mean, you bounced this off me before it showed up on the agenda. I realize that we make this. I mean, we're not dependent upon the utilities for making this decision. I mean, I don't think that's a factor here necessarily, or should be. But by the same token, there definitely are economies and efficiencies that are realized if we can keep this relationship together. And as I understand it, there's also been up till now we have borne the cost of Great Western services, and you've had some conversation with the utilities that they may be receptive to sharing in that cost going forward, which is a change from the past. So to me, I think if we were to make a change, we're trying to fix something that isn't broken. You've got a 20-year relationship practically that is working. That I've got the utmost respect for both institutions, but I would really like to see us stay with the Great Western at this point. It's a three-year commitment is what we're looking at here, but I would endorse this.
Mike?
Kristen, just for discussion purposes and knowing, what kind of difference, if you laid out the proposals at the end of a year, what does that mean to us in regards to expenses or incomes based on the different proposals?
There wasn't, and it's hard for me to I didn't write all that down because I kind of felt like after they were rejected at that point. If I do remember correctly, if the city was to take on the responsibility of processing the checks, there would be no monthly service fee from ReliaBank. I think if they would take on the processing, it was a $500 a month fee. So there's a little bit of difference in the fees, but I can't speak too much to the interest. I didn't prepare to probably talk about the interest. You can see that the interest rates that Great Western proposed, they changed how they're going to calculate interest on this current agreement. And I do think that in their proposal this past summer, they had at that point to use the 91-day T-bill. So that is similar to the summer.
So we have, what we're dealing with now is basically an extension with some modified terms with Great Western. We didn't receive additional, we didn't go out for a proposal again.
You're correct. Yep.
Okay.
David Evers from Reliabank is in the audience. Would you like to say something?
Sure. And that's just it. This didn't go out for RFP again. We bid way back in May. At that time, I can tell you, and I have the sheets that were part of your packet in May. Okay? Just to give you a little recap, when we proposed this two different ways. We proposed a fee of $500 per month if we did all the check processing, or we proposed a no fee if you used deposit capture software that actually deposited the cash, those checks right into our bank electronically. At that time also, we were proposing a 22 basis points over the T-bill, which at that time Great Western was proposing 15 basis points over the same one, and now they're proposing 8 basis points. So, as I look at this a little bit, if you don't, without negotiating or going out for bids, they just took 7 basis points on all your money away. Plus, they did lower the fee. They had proposed $950. We had proposed either $500 or $0. Yes, I understand that this is a lot of work for people, but I also understand that, in my mind, it was $15,000 a year positive for the city. So we weren't talking pennies.
And that includes the fee difference.
That was the fee difference and the interest
basis difference.
Yeah, and in our proposal, 22 basis points was the low point, because we had a sliding scale on that depending on your bank balance, and that would have went up to 31 or 34 basis points, depending on balance, which at that time you would have easily been in the 34 basis points area.
So 22 would be the lowest that it would go.
Exactly. So to me, you've always gone out for RFPs on these since the 90s. If you're going to change that process, I think you're going to discourage banks from bidding on your services in the future, because what's my incentive at that point if it's not going to?
Josh?
You said an image capturing software. Is there a cost to the city to purchase that or lease it?
There was no cost to that. Basically how that system works is right now you're running a tape, or you're adding all your checks together. Well, it runs through the machine and does the same thing for you. The county, Cottington County uses that system today and has for many years now. So it's proven, it works.
Kristen, what if any extra work would that involve for you, for your people?
That's the point that I said. I think our office, and I am currently having Sarah in our office gather that information daily. She's keeping track of how much cash comes in, and then she's also counting the number of checks. Now, this is our slow time for checks, so I don't feel I would have a good grasp of that until the summer comes, when Park and Rec picks up and we have lots of checks come through. So that's what was difficult for me at this time to determine would we be able to even take the option of processing. And I know that's one thing that utilities did not think they could undertake with how many checks they receive for utility payments.
Don?
I have a suggestion. Again, I sat on the committee on this where this was an RFP. It wasn't actual bid letting. So it's not hard and stone like it is a bid letting. Nonetheless, the integrity of the process has to be acknowledged here. Also, though, I do take very serious what Kristen said in terms of, you're new to the finance officer position. Your number 2 is new to that position, so I get that too. Here's a suggestion. What if we sign this agreement with one modification? If you took the initial term and reduced that, that gives you a period of time to get into this, and then, let's say it's a year. You get into this kind of goal, and then if you want to do an RFP at that point in time, you as finance officer can make that decision, but you don't have to wait 3 years. And I only say that in sense of because the workload, the newness, if you will, but there is a little bit of an issue with the integrity of an RFP process at hand.
Adam?
Was there any reason given for why they dropped the points?
David, can you clarify when it went out, what was the rate when the T-bill?
Thank you.
Sure, Mike.
Okay, so I think a little bit of the difference is if you look at the top portion, the interest on the idle funds at the time this summer of bidding was, I think, around, it looks like 0.93, 0.97. Currently, right now, I looked at what the 2 different rates comparing Great Western's previous contract to the one that's in front of you today. The federal funds rate is at 1.5, and the 91-day T-bill is at 1.57. So I don't know, and can't speak for a lot of stuff in regards to the interest in banking, but it seems a little bit higher. So I don't know if that's why it's a timing issue of when I approached to renew this agreement that they couldn't do the 15. I can't. That's the only thing that I can see is that there is a difference between what the current interest rates were at the time of the RFP to now.
Mike?
Dave, when you had mentioned that on current balance, we would most likely fit in, you referenced, I think, a 0.34 or something like that.
Right, and I actually have our original bid for you. At that time, we were saying that we would be 22 basis points over the 3-month CMT, which the 3-month CMT and the 91-day T-bill are basically the same thing. The reason for the terms is not every day does the United States government sell 91-day T-bills, but there's an implied rate in the yield curve, and that's what a CMT rate, constant maturity treasury. So just to clarify that. But at that time, from $1 million and less, we would have paid 22 basis points. From 1 to 5 million, we would have paid 31 basis points over, and 5 million and above would have been 34 basis points above. And I can share that proposal with you.
Would that, and you said that based on our balances that you viewed at the time, we would most likely have qualified for the 0.34.
Right.
Was that city only, or was that city and utilities?
At that time, the balance we were showing was the average combined account.
Okay, and so how do you know how that would differ if we were separate?
I do not know. To be real honest, in my world, basis points would stay the same difference. I don't know where your balance would be, but.
Well, Mayor, I'd just like to make a comment. I agree with Don. I think the process is really, really important, and I don't know if there's the possibility of getting Great Western to go to a 1 year so you guys can get some ground under your feet a little bit and get the department more mature in regards to your experience. That seems like, I don't know if that's unreasonable or not to ask them, but from our perspective, it seems reasonable. And I do agree with Don. I think that there is a process that we have to be very sensitive to. And it just seems logical that if we're going to go out for proposals that we have to be ready to deal with the process. And if we can get ourselves a little bit of time, then go back after it. It seems appropriate to me.
Okay, Glenn?
Kristen, our agreement actually expired. We're actually been operating without an agreement recently. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct.
Okay. You know, as I listen to the conversation too, a year from now, would your staff be in a position to provide the information that so we can compare apples to apples here with whomever may be interested in providing services to us?
I think within a year, yeah, I think that's fair to say. I could get a better handle on the amount of checks that are processed in our office. I think the big question is going to be probably the discussion of, do we separate funds? I think that's more what it's going to come down to. I do think within a year, yes, I'll probably be able to take on a little bit more change. But I think the biggest thing will be at that point, where's the split? Do we split? Do we stay?
If we were to reject what we've got in front of us, do we then need to go back to Great Western and have them see if they're agreeable to a 1-year contract? Or I guess I'm as far as a procedure that we'd follow if we don't accept this tonight.
I would say yes, that we would then want to, I mean, like as I stated, I did work on this agreement with Adam at the utilities and Great Western. So I think that if we change something as significant as the terms of it, that yes, it would only be right to go back to Great Western and see if they agree as well.
And just for clarification, tell me again what municipal utilities did and did not want to do in terms of the banking. They did not want to be separate, or they did want to be separate?
What
they didn't want to change.
Yes, they wanted to remain with Great Western Bank.
Okay. So, okay. Got
Do
it.
they have a separate contract with Great Western?
No, we are all one contract.
Okay, so they're without a contract as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think, just as a comment to it, if we look to make a change at some point, whenever, I think we also have to do some qualitative work in regards to the cost of the change, because that's very real expense to us. And so I would, if that's the direction that ultimately we go, that needs to be part of our justification for what we do or don't do at that point.
And that is correct. I mean, if anytime you switch banks, you have the checks that aren't used, you void and have to reorder checks with your new account. Some of the stuff that I think takes time is, and I think the banks help you in all that process, is if you have automatic withdrawals and automatic deposits and all that. That's a lot of change and just making sure that everything's correct. So it does take the time. Yep.
Any other questions, Dan?
I think I would agree with what's been said in terms of giving it some credence to the process. But I also appreciate what you're saying, Kristen, that having 6 months of experience is totally different than a year and a half also. And I think next year you would probably be able to give us both the savings that they might get through another bank, but also the cost of changing. And so when you put those two together, I think that might really help us make the decision.
Anyone else? Okay, there is a motion on the floor.
Well, can I ask a question? Can we modify the motion, the terms in there, or it's either yay or nay based on what you have in writing? Or could we say, like, to change the motion to a 1-year term, if we approve it and they don't approve it, then obviously it starts over, something has to happen. But at least if we approve it and they approve it, we're done from this aspect, correct? I don't know if we can do that or not.
I believe you can, yes. You can make a motion to approve the terms of the agreement with the modification of changing it from 1 year, or from 3 years to 1 year. That way they don't have to come back to council. If they agree to it, then they could just sign it, it can be done. If they don't agree, then it would have to come back to council.
Do we do that in a substitute motion since there's already a motion on the
Yes.
floor?
Yes.
So is there?
Okay.
Oh,
Okay,
Glenn?
I made the original motion. Can I offer a substitute motion then, or what's the process?
You can, or anybody can, but you can as well.
Glenn, before you do that, do we need a definitive date for the end of the 1 year, or do we need to set a date like June 1st or whatever it is?
Do we do it from the day that it's signed?
It would be from the day it would be
Okay.
signed, so.
And are we going to leave the renewal options in there? There's a renewal option for 2 3-year terms beyond that.
It's in the term,
You
the
can
very
leave those,
top.
because they're gonna make your decision.
Right, those aren't.
Yeah.
You can always-
Yeah, go ahead.
You can always say, I'm not gonna do the renewal option, or I am. You still have that flexibility.
All right.
I would make a substitute motion then to change the term to 1 year, subject to the utilities and Great Western Bank also approving that term. Is that an appropriate substitute motion?
Yes.
Is there a second? Second by Danforth. Motion by Vilhauer. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
I did just want to point out too that after now hearing this, I'll go back to Great Western, and municipal utilities, I believe, meets on the 26th. So at that time, I can gather what they would like to do too. So thank you.
All right, item number 6 is approval of resolution number 18-04 to adopt the Cottington County Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan 2017 to 2022. And this was recommended by the Public Works Committee. Is there a motion and second? Moved by Bueller, second by Manti. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 7 is recommendation of an alternative accommodation for two-way traffic on Kemp Avenue at Highway 81. And there was a recommendation by the Public Works Committee to consider eliminating the signal and look at alternatives after the DOT does some traffic study on this intersection. So, is there a motion to approve that? So moved. Moved by Josh, second by Mike. Any discussion?
I don't know. Is he here? I don't want to put him on the spot. Scott, do you have some statistics as to any kind of motor vehicle accidents relative to that intersection, just as we're looking at this? Can you share those if you have them?
Sure. Scott McMahon, Captain Sports Services, Watertown Police Department. We did do some research in reference to this agenda item, and what we found is that there was 6 crashes that occurred at that intersection of 81 and Kemp Avenue. The reason why I looked at it a little bit closer was some of my background experience with the police department is serving or has been serving as a crash reconstructionist. So when you look at a crash, you look at a few different attributing factors, whether that's vehicle, roadway, or driver circumstances. In the 6 that I looked at, 4 of those were north and southbound intersection-related crashes. So in other words, they weren't in the boundaries of the intersection, but they're intersection-related, which normally means first car is stopped, second car comes up and doesn't stop and collides with the rear. So in that case, we had 4 of those that were on north and southbound 81. We had 1 vehicle that was westbound on Kemp that for whatever reason, accelerated out of control, went across the intersection and hit the curb. And then we also had one crash that wasn't intersection related, meaning that it happened within the boundaries of that intersection. And that was a vehicle that was southbound on 81, hit the brakes, didn't stop for the red light, slid through, crashed with another vehicle. So the point of these crashes, or the reason for looking at them, is to try and determine cause. And what it appears is that had that signal light not been there, probably 4 or 5 of the crashes probably would have never occurred. So in other words, I agree with the state DOT engineer person that was here that sometimes a traffic signal can be more of a hindrance than it can be of a positive nature. So his assessment is the same approach that I would do, which is take a look and do a study and find out how many vehicles want to proceed west across the road versus making a right-hand turn, as I do every morning on my way to work. And then, of course, you also need to study the pedestrian traffic, and that's always a huge concern for public safety law enforcement, is to make sure that our pedestrians stay safe in the community. So, just as a looking at it as a glance from what was discussed earlier tonight, it appears that the right direction is to do what you intend to do, which is, 1, we looked at our information. 2, we'll do a traffic study. 3, it might be that light is removed, and in that case, we could end up with a recommendation, or we might prove through our traffic study that now if we remove that light, we might see that there's more intersection accidents as a result of somebody trying to cross Highway 81 on Kemp either direction, east or west. So that's what that traffic study will do, is determine if we are going to increase the possibilities of intersection crashes versus intersection-related crashes. So it'll be interesting to take a look at those studies, and like say, if the light is removed, we'd certainly be in favor of a pedestrian-type alert system.
Thank you for doing that research.
Thank you.
Very nice.
What was the time period for the 6 accidents?
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. It was 2016 through 2017, so a 2-year period that we at the police department investigated 6 crashes. I should mention as well that the Highway Patrol did look at 4 crashes, but I don't have any information as far as how they happened, why they happened, or the severity of the crashes. But the ones from the police department that we did, I can look at those, and like I say, using some of my experiences, accident reconstruction, is to try and find factors that attributed to the crashes.
Great. Good information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Josh?
Do you have any statistics on pedestrian or bicycle accidents at that intersection?
There has been none reported. The 6 that I had were 4, like I said, that were intersection related, involving vehicles. 1 that was out of control vehicle essentially, and then 1 that was an intersection accident. But they all involved vehicles, no pedestrians, bicycles, or anything like that.
Mike?
Scott, there's other areas up and down of Highway 81 that where we always have traffic, and we got a lot of traffic coming off the side streets without lights.
Sure.
You coming off of Arrow, for example. Now, granted, you can't go through, but you've got the curve.
Right.
Same thing as you come by Foxy's and Hubbard there. Going south, there are streets there that have a fair amount of traffic that there is no stop. Do we see higher incidents in those types of intersections today, do you know?
Well, before I give a yes or no answer, I'd kind of like to look at each intersection and make a good, valid research attempt to find out what the problems are and find out what the numbers are. I know one question that was raised earlier, I think it was Don raised the question, is this going to cause people to take alternative routes, or in that case make a right-hand turn as I do each morning rather than try and proceed across the highway? And we'll know those results once we know how much traffic is proceeding straight to the west on Kemp Avenue versus making a right-hand turn as I already do each day. So it might be that a lot of the traffic that's already coming there already is making right turns rather than it being an issue of I don't want to cross the highway, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
Thanks, Scott.
Item number 8 is authorization for the mayor to sign the 2017 annual MS4 report for DENR, and this was recommended by the Public Works Committee. Is there a motion and second?
So moved.
Moved by Bueller, second by Lallam. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 9 is authorization for the mayor to sign agreement for engineering services to HDR Engineering, Inc. in the amount of $22,795 for the wastewater treatment facility administration building space evaluation project number 1817. And this was recommended by the Public Works Committee. Is there a motion and second for approval? Moved by Lallam, second by Solom. Any discussion or questions?
I just have a question. I mean, this was fairly well vetted out in the committee, and it's going to get approved. Do we need to have Mike hang out all night through a meeting to support that when he's already been through the ringer once? And if we do need him, that's great. I'm just asking in terms of efficiency.
Well, you never know when someone's going to ask a tough question that I can't answer. But I guess if there's no questions, he didn't need to be here. We do appreciate that you're here, Mike.
Yeah, we like having him here. I'm looking for ways to, be more efficient. And I know that, I think the committees do that because we take action in the committees. I think that's a real bonus for us. But so we're using city resources when I think we have already vetted the project. Now, if we do need him here, then we do. I just thought I'd raise the question.
That's a good question. And maybe if it's a complex topic that we might get some pushback on, we would ask the staff members to stick around. This one, maybe not so much.
Maybe.
Didn't know about that in advance.
We might have to look at just what each project is and if there's opposition on it. I mean, that would probably
Yeah.
be the bigger
Right.
concern area. If there's a lot of public input on it, I think we'd have to look at that. But if it's something like this where it's an engineering services, I mean, it's like, hey, we're going to make sure that it's feasible to do this. I think we could move through that pretty quickly.
I think so too. Case by case basis. Maybe next time you won't have to come, Mike. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 10 is old business. Is there any? Is there any new business? Are there any liaison reports? Don?
Tomorrow's Watertown Day at the legislature. I know some of you here are going, so there's a bus going out with about 30 people on it, I think, and then there will be some others that'll travel out there independently. So just an FYI on that. I've gone to this before. It's a good chance for us to talk to the legislators out there, and every now and then bend their ear a little bit. So that's just an FYI.
Thank you. Anything else? All right. We do have a need to have an executive session this evening in order to discuss and consult with legal counsel on a contractual matter. So I will look for motion and second to go into executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2.
So moved.
Moved by Lallam, second by Y. All those in favor
Sarah,
signify.
just-
Sorry.
Do you anticipate any
I
decisions?
do not expect any action afterwards. Thank you for asking that. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. We are in executive session.